I declined to join a group lawsuit my neighbor organized against the HOA. The next week, my trash was scattered with rotten meat across the lawn. He drove by, rolled down his window. Silence is siding with tyrants. I tried to ignore him, until I found a microphone taped under my table and realized someone had been listening to every. I'm a 43-year-old guy living in Port Orchard, Washington. After my divorce, I just wanted peace. No big social circle, no drama, just a place where I could drink coffee in the morning, walk my dog, and keep my head down. The HOA in my neighborhood is strict, yeah, but manageable. I never had any personal issues with them. Pay the fees, follow the rules, nobody bothers you. That worked for me. Then Brent moved in. He bought the place 3 doors down last summer. Loud truck, loud voice, always pacing in his front yard talking on the phone about freedom rights and how the system was broken. He introduced himself to me the second week after moving in. Tall guy, probably mid-40s, strong build, ex-military. He made sure I knew that within 5 minutes. He handed me a clipboard and said he was organizing a lawsuit against the HOA. Said they were corrupt. That the president of the board was misusing funds. That the fines were illegal. He had files, highlighted notes, even printouts of the HOA bylaws. I barely skimmed it. I told him I wasn't interested. I'd had enough legal drama with my divorce. I didn't want anything to do with a neighborhood lawsuit. I was polite about it. He didn't like that. He stared at me for a long second, then laughed and said, "Well, when they come for you, don't say I didn't warn you." That was the last calm moment I had for a while. The next Tuesday, I woke up to the worst smell I've ever experienced. I thought maybe something had died in the crawlspace. I went outside and found my entire front lawn covered in garbage. Rotten meat, like it had been sitting in the sun for days, scattered everywhere. Chicken wings, fish heads, ground beef soaked in a black liquid. Trash bags ripped open. Flies swarming. I stood there, frozen, gagging, trying to figure out what happened. Then a black Dodge Ram slowed down as it passed. Window rolled down. It was Brent. He looked right at me, expression blank, and said in a low voice, "Silence is siding with tyrants." Then he drove off. I wanted to believe it was just a sick joke. Maybe he was blowing off steam. I reported it to the HOA, thinking maybe they'd do something. They told me they'd investigate, and reminded me to keep my trash secure. That was it. I cleaned it all up myself. Over the next few weeks, it kept escalating. Someone started moving my garbage cans around in the middle of the night. My car got keyed, not once, but twice. The second time, the word "coward" was scratched into the hood. I got packages that I never ordered. One of them was a used toilet seat. I didn't see Brent do any of it, but my gut told me it was him. I started locking everything. Got a Ring camera. But the weirdest part came later. One night, I got an email from an anonymous address. No message. Just an attachment. I opened it. It was a video of me, sitting at my own dining table, eating a frozen lasagna while watching TV. The angle of the shot was low, like it was taken from under the table. I paused the video and looked at the frame. It showed my slippers, the fork in my hand, my kitchen in full detail. I checked the timestamp. It was from 2 nights ago. I lost it. I flipped the dining table over and found a small black microphone duct taped to the underside. I ripped it off, shaking. Called the cops. They came, took some notes, but didn't seem that interested. "You got anyone who might have a grudge?" they asked. I told them about Brent. I showed them the meat incident, the keyed car, the video. They nodded, wrote stuff down, but I could tell they weren't going to do much. Maybe they didn't have enough. Maybe they didn't care. I realized I'd have to handle it myself. So I started watching. Brent left for work around 6:30 every morning. I followed him a couple times, not closely. Just to confirm, he worked at a construction site across town. He'd usually come back late, around 7. That gave me windows. I installed 3 new cameras, 2 outside, 1 inside facing the back door. I upgraded the locks. Bought pepper spray. I started documenting everything. Dates, times, incidents, anything suspicious. Then I started asking around. Turns out Brent had gotten several neighbors to sign on to his lawsuit. Most of them older folks, some of them new to the area. He told them horror stories about the HOA, how they'd seize property, hike up fees, destroy people's finances. He'd convinced them to go in as a group. But some people had backed out after realizing how unstable he was. One guy, Manny, lived 2 blocks over. I saw him one evening and asked him straight up if he'd had any issues with Brent. He looked around like someone might be watching, then pulled me aside. "He's dangerous," Manny whispered. "He threatened to put sugar in my gas tank because I dropped out of the lawsuit. Told me I'd regret siding with the enemy." Then he showed me the security cameras he'd installed all over his property. Another neighbor, Sheila, had a similar story. She had found dead rodents in her mailbox twice after telling Brent she didn't want to get political about the HOA. I wasn't alone. But I was the only one who seemed willing to fight back. I started saving everything. I created a Google Drive folder with photos, videos, logs, timestamps. I started planning. I didn't have to wait long. One night, around 2:30 a.m., I heard something outside. I checked the camera feed on my phone. There he was, Brent. In my backyard. Dressed in all black. Carrying a tool bag. He walked up to my kitchen window and took something out of the bag. Looked like a glass cutter and a screwdriver. I called the police immediately. Stayed quiet. Stayed low. They arrived 10 minutes later and caught him just as he was trying to force the lock on the back door. They tackled him, cuffed him, and found everything in his bag: 2 more hidden microphones, a switchblade, zip ties, a small bottle of bleach, a voice recorder already running. He said it was all a misunderstanding. He was arrested. I gave the police the full drive with all the documentation. I thought it was over. The next morning, I got a new email. No subject line. No name. Just this message: "Brent was just the beginning. You chose the wrong side." Attached were pictures of me at the grocery store. At work. Walking my dog. Brent wasn't working alone. And now they were coming for me. After that email, I stopped sleeping right. Every time I left my house, I scanned the street. Every time I came back, I checked every lock, every window. I even started looking under my car. It sounds paranoid, but I didn't know how far this thing went. Whoever sent that message had followed me. Taken pictures up close. I couldn't trust anyone now, not my neighbors, not the HOA, not the cops. Brent was in jail, but it felt like his shadow was still in my house. I upgraded everything. Alarm system. New locks. I even got a second phone and set up a dummy email account to try to bait whoever was watching me. I left it open on my laptop screen near the window, just to see if someone would try to break in again. Nothing. For a week, it was quiet. Then the letter came. Not an email. A real, handwritten letter. No envelope. Just taped to my front door with black electrical tape. The handwriting was shaky, almost like someone was rushing. "We saw you talk to Manny. He's on thin ice. Stay away from him, and keep your mouth shut. This is bigger than you think. The board, the city, all of it." That was the first time I realized this wasn't just a neighborhood squabble. They were pushing something bigger. Or at least they thought they were. I went back to Manny's place to warn him. He didn't answer. I waited around until his garage door opened and he came out. His face was pale, and his left eye was bruised. "What happened to you?" I asked. He looked away. "Fell." I told him about the letter. He didn't seem surprised. He looked at me and said, "They're trying to scare you. But it's more than that now. Brent wasn't just angry at the HOA. He thought they were part of some kind of cover-up. He thought the HOA was funneling money into a shell company. That's what the lawsuit was really about. I asked him if he believed it. I don't know, he said. I just know people keep quiet because they're scared. And honestly, I'm scared too. Then he told me something that chilled me to the bone. He said Brent wasn't working alone, but it wasn't just the neighbors either. Apparently, there was a guy named Arthur who used to live in our development. He was an accountant. Quiet guy. Never spoke much. One day, he put up a post in the community forum questioning the HOA's annual budget report. A week later, his house caught fire. Fire department ruled it an accident, bad wiring. But Manny said Arthur had been getting threats before it happened. He moved out 3 weeks later. Never said goodbye to anyone. Just vanished. Now I knew why Brent thought this was bigger than lawn violations and fines. And I had a feeling it was true. That night, I checked the HOA website. I downloaded every financial report I could find. Quarterly dues. Expenditures. Contracts. One name kept popping up under contracted maintenance services. A company called Civic Pro Solutions. I looked them up. Their website was bare. No contact info. Just a single page with stock photos and a list of vague services: property maintenance, compliance consulting, community standards development. I dug deeper. The address listed for their office was a UPS store in Tacoma. I called the number. Disconnected. It smelled rotten. So I made a plan. I printed out the documents, marked the pages that mentioned Civic Pro, and slipped copies into 3 different envelopes. One I mailed to a local investigative reporter. The second I sent to a state oversight office. The third I left in my glove compartment, just in case something happened to me. I didn't tell anyone. Not even Manny. A few days later, my tires were slashed. All 4. No note this time. Just a slow, creeping feeling that someone was watching as I discovered them. That night, my cameras picked up movement around 3 a.m. 2 people. Dressed in black. One stood by my fence, the other near my back porch. They didn't try to break in. They just stood there. For 7 minutes. Then they walked away. They wanted me to see them. They wanted me to feel watched. So I flipped it on them. I started watching them. I set up a decoy trash can with a GPS tracker hidden in the lid. A week later, it disappeared. I followed the location all the way to a rental storage unit in Bremerton. I wrote down the number. Then I waited until someone came back. It was a woman. Mid-30s. Hoodie. She unlocked the unit, looked around like she was being followed, and went inside for about 10 minutes. When she came out, she was holding a laptop and a black duffel bag. I followed her to a small rental house on the edge of town. I sat in my car, lights off, engine cold, and watched her go inside. Then I went home and started building a new file. Not just about Brent. Not just about the HOA. But about everyone. I was done playing defense. Now it was time to go on the attack. By the end of that week, I had names, addresses, license plates. I had footage of 2 more people entering the same storage unit the woman had used. One of them was a man I'd seen before, tall, bald, wore wire-rimmed glasses. He lived in our development, 6 houses up. I didn't know his name, but I had video of him walking his dog every evening. I nicknamed him Specs. Specs had a pattern. He left the house around 7:30, walked the same route, phone in hand, always taking pictures. Not selfies. Street signs. Cars. Driveways. Like he was documenting something. Then one day I caught him photographing my backyard from the alley. I confronted him. Walked straight up to him, phone in hand, recording. He looked nervous, tried to walk away, but I blocked his path. "You taking pictures of my house?" I asked. "No. Just walking my dog," he said, holding up the leash. I raised my phone higher. "Smile for the camera, neighbor." He didn't say anything else. Just turned around and walked off fast. That same night, someone hacked my Wi-Fi. I came home from work to find all 3 of my cameras offline. When I reset the router, the network name had been changed. It now said, "We see you." I called the internet company. They confirmed someone had accessed my router remotely through a backdoor left in the default firmware. Someone tech-savvy. Probably the woman from the storage unit. This wasn't neighborhood bullying anymore. This was coordinated. And it was escalating. I needed help. Real help. So I went to see the only person outside the neighborhood I trusted, my cousin Rich. He lives in Tacoma, works in IT for a private firm. He's the kind of guy who speaks fluent firewall and thinks two-factor authentication is for amateurs. I showed him everything: videos, emails, the Civic Pro documents, the GPS logs. He didn't laugh. He didn't roll his eyes. He said, "This isn't a homeowner beef. This is a blackmail ring." That word made my stomach drop. He explained that Civic Pro looked like a shell for a data mining group, possibly ex-law enforcement or military contractors. Their model? Take over HOAs. Push out residents who resisted. Use dirty tactics, surveillance, intimidation, legal threats, to scare people into settling or selling under pressure. Then flip the homes for profit using fake contractor invoices and pocket the margins. I asked him if he could prove any of it. He smiled. "Give me access to your router and a weekend." 3 days later, he handed me a thumb drive. Inside were logs, IP addresses, internal emails copied from a hidden Civic Pro admin panel. One of them even mentioned Brent by name. Called him a field asset with volatility risk. There it was. Proof that Brent had been working for them. Maybe not officially, but enough to get labeled in their comms. They were using neighbors as informants. And they weren't above using force to get compliance. I didn't know what to do with it. If I went to the police, they might be connected too. If I went to the HOA, they were the problem. I didn't know which neighbors I could trust. Then Rich said something that stuck with me. "You don't beat these people by hiding. You beat them by making noise. Public noise." So I made noise. I uploaded everything. Created a site with no identifying details, just titled Civic Profiles, exposing the hidden network in Port Orchard. I sent anonymous tips to local reporters, bloggers, even posted it in neighborhood Facebook groups using a fake profile. The story started to spread. And that's when it got really bad. My car got torched. Middle of the night, someone smashed the window, poured accelerant inside, and lit it up. Neighbors called the fire department. It was too late. Nothing left but a melted frame and a cracked windshield with the words, "Final warning," burned into the soot. I filed the report. Again. This time, the cops did seem interested. When I showed them the website, one of them said, "You wrote this?" I told him yes. He looked at me, then leaned in close. "You need to be careful. These people, they're not just some HOA clowns. We've heard rumors. Just stay somewhere else for a few days. Don't be alone." He didn't say more than that, but his face said enough. So I packed a bag and stayed with Rich. We set up a trap. Rich had a dummy email address reach out to Civic Pro pretending to be a neighbor from another town interested in partnering with their HOA strategy. They responded in 2 hours. Sent a whole pitch deck. Charts. Margins. Even a fake business address tied to another shell company in Spokane. We had what we needed. Then, something unexpected happened. The woman from the storage unit, she showed up at my old house. Rich still had cameras running. She walked right up to the door, knocked, then left an envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed. Brent flipped. "He's talking to the state. If you're smart, you'll stop this now. This is your last window. Walk away, or your life becomes a project." Brent flipped. That meant they were scared. It also meant I had one chance to go all in before they disappeared or buried the trail. I had names now. Photos. Proof of coordination between Civic Pro and at least 2 HOA board members. And a file showing payouts to a consultant. With a name I hadn't seen before but traced back to a P.O. box in Seattle used by shell corporations. They wanted to scare me into silence. Instead, they gave me everything I needed to blow it wide open. I spent the next 48 hours prepping everything. The thumb drive. The emails. The Civic Pro documents. The photos. I turned it all into a detailed report. Names, dates, links, financial connections, threats, camera footage. I didn't write it like a conspiracy rant. I wrote it like a prosecutor building a case. And I sent it to everyone. Not just reporters. I sent it to the Washington State Attorney General's office, the local FBI field office, the Better Business Bureau, 3 lawyers who specialized in RICO cases. I even dropped a copy off with a local news station in Seattle. Then I waited. And in the meantime, I watched my old neighborhood burn from afar, not literally, but socially. It started small. The HOA sent out a letter saying the board president, Craig Delmore, was taking an indefinite leave. Then one of the board members, Cheryl, resigned without explanation. 2 homes went up for sale within a week, both owned by people I knew had signed Brent's original lawsuit. Then Brent's mugshot hit the local news. HOA lawsuit organizer charged with trespassing, vandalism, and conspiracy to commit wiretapping. The article didn't go into detail, but it hinted that more charges were pending. That same day, Brent's lawyer, court-appointed, from what I heard, leaked that Brent was cooperating with federal investigators. They were digging hard. 3 weeks later, Civic Pro Solutions was officially shut down. The state filed paperwork to dissolve the business for fraud and failure to disclose financial operations. The Seattle Times published a full exposé connecting Civic Pro to 5 other HOAs across Washington and Oregon. They'd been doing the same thing elsewhere, planting insiders, pushing residents to sell, flipping homes through straw buyers, hiding profits in fake maintenance fees. My neighborhood was just one piece. And then came the knock at my door. Not from Brent. Not from Civic Pro. It was the FBI. 2 agents. Clean suits, badges out. They wanted to talk. I wasn't in trouble, they made that clear. In fact, they asked if I'd be willing to testify. Not just about Brent, but about the threats, the documents, the way the HOA board had acted. They had enough to pursue federal racketeering charges. I agreed. And just like that, I was inside something bigger than I'd ever imagined. Over the next few months, subpoenas flew. Depositions, interviews, more dirt surfaced. Turns out one of the board members had been getting kickbacks. Another had a cousin tied to Civic Pro. Brent was the blunt instrument, but the real players were the ones in suits, laundering HOA money through shell contracts. And karma? It didn't just show up. It showed up with paperwork and jail time. Craig Delmore, the board president, was indicted on fraud and conspiracy. He lost everything. His job, his house, his reputation. Turns out he'd been using HOA funds to pay off personal debts and funnel side payments into his landscaping company, which barely existed. Cheryl, the board member who resigned early, got caught lying under oath and was fined and banned from holding any future leadership role in any community organization. Civic Pro's founder, whose name ended up being James Holler, was arrested in Arizona after trying to flee with forged IDs and $70,000 in crypto. And Brent? He cut a deal. Turned on everyone. But the judge didn't go easy. He got 2 years, with another 5 of probation. The court called him a willing enforcer of an illegal intimidation scheme. His military background did nothing to help him once the court saw the videos of him dumping meat on my lawn and planting devices in my home. The others, Specs, the woman from the storage unit, all of them, they were all part of a local enforcement unit Civic Pro used. Most of them pled out and gave up more names. The entire operation collapsed. My name was in the paper. Not just as a victim. As the guy who brought it all down. At first, that felt good. But the truth? It came with a price. I couldn't go back to that neighborhood. Even with the board gone and Civic Pro dissolved, too much had happened. Too many neighbors had looked the other way, or helped. Even after everything came out, most of them never apologized. Some still thought I made things worse by going public. So I sold the house. Got a good price for it, surprisingly. One of the honest board members helped get it listed, free of charge. Said it was the least she could do. I moved to the other side of Kitsap County. Bought a quiet little house in Poulsbo, away from HOAs and neighborhood boards and anyone who knocks on my door holding a clipboard. I still keep a camera at every entrance. Still check my mirrors when I drive. Still don't answer anonymous emails. But I sleep now. And sometimes, late at night, I go back through the files. Just to remind myself I wasn't crazy. That I didn't imagine it. That I stood my ground and brought the whole damn thing down. Sometimes revenge isn't fire and fury. Sometimes it's a hard drive, a paper trail, and the patience to wait while the truth eats them from the inside out. They thought they could scare me into silence. Instead, I made them hear me. Loud and clear. All the way to court. All the way to prison. And if anyone ever tries that again, I've got backups. And I've got time.